My name is Amy Lillard. I'm the Executive Director of Washington Filmworks. We have a couple of quick things, business items to attend to. And I always I'm a big survey girl. So how many of you have taken the first annual job survey? That's none of us. So Washington Filmworks is in the middle of working with the community, trying to assess how you create your careers. And we have our first annual job survey. And what it does is it asks you a bunch of questions how you create your careers. It asks you some uncomfortable questions like, are you an independent contractor? Have you been on unemployment? How much money do you make? But it does. But the great news is it's all about empowering you guys in the long haul. What we're trying to figure out is how can we best support you and best support your careers. So on our blog, blog.washingtonfilmworks.org is a link to the survey. It closes on Friday. Please, please, please take it, because we need your opinions and we need your voice, and help us help you. As a matter of fact, next happy hour, I will be here presenting the results of our first annual economic impact study of the Washington State film industry, which we're furiously writing right now. So, but tonight, we are all here to listen to Mr. Steve Edmiston. I think Steve is such a wonderful hybrid of a professional. He's got the business side in that he's an entertainment attorney. He has got the creative side in that he is a screenwriter in his own right. And he's got the crazy side because he's a producer too. So Steve's here tonight to talk to you about how to make the most of your Kickstarter campaign. He's going to give you the secret sauce, as James Cutlass likes to say, and he's going to turn it over to you. Welcome, Steve.
Thank you. So I now fully appreciate performers who are used to talking to audiences with that light in their eyes. That's amazing. So I'll do a lot of squinting because I am not used to that, because that doesn't happen in a courtroom and it doesn't happen in any part of a film set that I'm ever on. So it's very unique to me. Provocative title to the talk today: how do I rig? Can I rig this game? In talking about crowdfunding in particular. But I think you need to know a little bit about me and my biases, kind of where I come from in this world, so that anything that I might say you can assess and decide if it's a bunch of BS or if it's useful to you. And so I want to talk a little bit about what I do, how I think about what I do, and then we'll launch into my thoughts on crowdfunding and how I want to do crowdfunding. I've been a lawyer for 27 some years. I work at a firm called Invicta Law Group. We're a small boutique business, entertainment, intellectual property, licensing, a little litigation, a little bit of everything, but focused on, to the extent Seattle lawyers can, that kind of IP and entertainment law. I'm excited about that. Do that every day. That's my waiting tables job. I'm also a business geek. I've created and operated a number of businesses, not counting film companies, which by the way are businesses. One of which was a game business that was fairly prominent in Seattle called Front Porch Classics. I was a co-founder. We ran that company out of Pioneer Square for about 6 or 7 years. Made a lot of products, sold a lot of games and toys, had a wonderful entrepreneurial experience. I fell in love with the world of making creative things and trying to make money off those creative things through that experience, probably more than any other experience that I've ever had. Front Porch was a wonderful entrepreneurial experience. I'm still in that business as a consultant with that little cute graphic, little box, Storybox Studios. I'm still actively involved in the game and toy business. I was actually in New York about a month ago speaking on the same subject, crowdfunding for inventors. And that's how Amy and I kind of chatted about maybe this would be an interesting topic for this group as an update. And I've been involved in film. I have a production company, EKE. We'll talk about the films in a second. Teach a little bit at the University of Washington in the screenwriting, and I teach at Seattle Film Institute. So I'm wearing a lot of hats, which I share with you because it does inform how I think about crowdfunding. So let's take a quick look at, by way of backstory, some of the projects. The top films there, you see Farewell to Harry, feature film that came out in about 2000. A Relative Thing, a feature film that came out in about 2003. I was a writer on both of those projects. My first producing experience was A Relative Thing. Crimes of the Past was released in 2009. I was a writer and producer. It premiered on Lifetime and is still in distribution. A great little short film I was involved in called The Day My Parents Became Cool. Got a lot of play around festivals, got a lot of distribution. I want to share those with you because I think those as projects that came out before 2009, there's almost nothing we can learn from them. Right? Okay? I mean, literally, as I look back and I say I have experience and I've done this and I've done this and it's fun and it's cool and they're around and they premiered, I can't say that I can look at those projects and they range in budget from $1 million. They're all independent films outside of LA. They've all found distribution, some more than one channel of distribution. They've all gone out internationally. They've all played film festivals. They've all won awards. I literally can't tell you something about that film. It'd be fun to talk about it. But I don't think we can learn from it. I think that's my view of how transformative the changes have been in our business in the last 3 and 4 years. So 2009, I mean, we'll talk about Kickstarter, 2009. That's when it launched. So in terms of that leg of the new triangle, financing, you know, that Indiegogo 2008, Kickstarter 2009, brand new. The bottom projects are kind of what I have in production. They're happening now. So I don't know what the answer is. Those aren't useful to you. 2 features, a Periphery project, a couple of feature films that are in post right now, and the Moray Island incident we'll talk about as a case study a little bit later in the talk. They're interesting to talk about, but they're really, you know, we're living now, I think, in the time of we have to figure it out as we go. There's just a lot of lessons I think we can learn, but they're happening in real time. So, now I share that background because I look at what I've done as a lawyer, in the world of business, and in the world of film, and I look at those things and I see connections, I see connective tissue in that. And it took me many, many years before I realized that as a lawyer, you know, I'm involved in stories and games, and as a businessman in the game industry, I'm involved in stories and games, and in the film world, I'm involved in some ways in stories and games. And I share it this way. So in law, if I'm a lawyer, I'm usually provided a problem. Client walks in my office, got a problem. Especially if it's law and order stuff, there's a dispute, right? There's a problem. The game is going to be between the 2 competing stories that are being told about solving that problem. The best story is going to win. Okay, that's the hope. Or if you're a lawyer, that's the hope. In business, I think we go out, if we're making a business plan, we identify a problem. Vacuum cleaners suck, I hate them, there's a better version. You know, whatever the product is, whatever it is. We identify a problem, and the game we play in the business world is to tell the best, or if not best, the first story that is compelling to win that game and solve that problem. I think a subset of that is film, independent film, at least for me. In independent film, the problem is to find or write a great story. Great story. And the game is to convince other people to invest or finance in some capacity, to collaborate on bringing that to life, to sell it, and ultimately to come and watch it. That's the game. And we're competing with a ton of other filmmakers trying to do the same thing for that scarce resource, right? So that's how I view the world and all of my world. So this provocative title, rigging the system. Do we rig these? Do we rig these worlds? I certainly feel that I do. When I go play the game of law, I get to choose the cases that I take. You know, if you've ever heard of a prosecutor crowing about 100% success rate, why do you think that success rate is 100%? Because he only chooses to take winners. He's never going to take a loser or a questionable case to trial. You're going to choose your cases to rig your record. You get, in our system, the choice of discovering your facts. We get to know in advance what the facts are. Remember, you've heard probably on Law and Order and every other procedure will never ask a question you don't know the answer to. How do you think you know the answer? Because you have compelled them to give you the answer in the discovery process. We get to control and fight about what evidence comes in, so we know what's coming in before it comes in. We get to pick jurors, and if I don't like you as a juror, I get rid of you. How can that not be rigging the game? I am rigging the game every minute that I'm playing it. And ultimately, the best story wins. How about business? We rig the business game every day we play it. I mean, the easiest example is we control the ideas around our business. Right? I have an idea. I want to control that idea. So I want to protect it, which means I want a trademark so no one can use my name, and I want a copyright so no one can steal my words. I may want a patent so no one can steal my process or my formula. If I'm going to let you be involved, I'm going to make you sign a non-disclosure agreement, and I'm going to make you, if you use my product, sign a license agreement. I'm going to control that whole process. I'm going to rig this game for my success. And if anyone violates the rules that I've created to my game, I'm going to sue them. I'm going to stop them. Okay? So yes, we rig business every day. That's just an example. How about now subset of business for independent film? In film world, do we rig the game? I do, if I can. If I can afford a name, I'll put a name in my film. If I can choose between equal choices, a film that I can tell that has a huge audience, I'm going to choose the story that I can tell that's going to attract a huge audience. I might say, I want to make a successful project. I'm going to make a horror film. I'm going to make a suspense thriller. I may not want a soft drama with no names because I've done that, by the way. Very hard to sell. Very hard to sell, no matter what the quality is. I'm going to go to a festival. I'm going to get in the festival. I'm going to lobby and try to get an award so I can put it on a poster so I can make it easier to sell my film. I'm going to try to rig the game. So, a couple of things you also need to know about me when I think about this rigging of the game is I love raising money. Now, I want to ask a question, I can't see you. How many of you actually, of all the things that you do, I'm doing this, do you love raising money to do that? I got one hand out of 100. I got 3, 4, 5 hands out of 100 people here. Of all the things you do you love the raising of the money? I love raising money, and let me tell you why. Because it is relevant to talking about crowdfunding. I love raising money because I only raise money for projects that I absolutely love. I love getting in a room with people and telling them about a project that I am totally, completely, 100% in love with, and that I believe with my heart, my soul, my intellect, my experience is a valid, appropriate business risk to take for them to jump into this bed with me and make this movie. It is easy to raise and love raising money in that context. It is fingernails on a chalkboard to raise money on something that I don't feel that way about. So I actually love the process of raising money. So I should love, I think, crowdfunding. One might think I do, that I would love crowdfunding. I have some mixed feelings about it. I look at crowdfunding as a way to finance a business or a project, and then we'll talk about film projects. And from my background, when I look at crowdfunding, and I've been looking at it for years now, since 2008, 2009, I've been watching it. I am not, if you haven't figured out, I'm not an early adopter, right? So I wait and wait and wait and try to understand the game before I play it. So I look at crowdfunding, and I understand how I normally raise money. How I normally raise money, right, is I understand there's 2 kinds of money. For years, I gave a talk about raising money, and there were 2 kinds of money. There was your money, right? You know, we have our own money. We have our own money. I got cash in my wallet. I got a credit card. I can make a phone. I got your money. And then there are other people's money, right? Other people's money. So other people's money was what? Well, I could go to a bank and get a loan. I could find someone who wants to make a donation. Maybe I could get a 501c3 umbrella. Northwest Film Forum, fantastic organization. And they could make a donation, they could get a tax deduction, but other people's money comes in through a donation. Or maybe I get a real investor. I actually go get a lawyer, which you should do, to get an investor, and they walk you through it. It's a whole other talk. But get a lawyer to help you raise money as an investor as other people's money. It's how you do it right. So you've got donors, you've got loaners, and you've got investors, other people's money. Now all of a sudden, 3 years ago, there's a new kind of other people's money. We didn't have it before. Crowdfunding. What is crowdfunding? Well, before I jump into that, I'm looking at this and I'm thinking, am I going to play this game? So Steve Edmiston asks questions like this. I want to know what the game is. I've been taking years figuring out what this game is so far. Do I need to play the game at all? Which of the crowdsourcing games should I play? This is like going to the casino in Vegas. A lot of different games you can choose from when you want to do this. Which one are you going to do? And if you're going to play it, what can you do to rig it? What can you do to make sure that you win? Those are the questions I ask. So, everyone here I'm sure knows what crowdfunding is. We're going to fly through this just to make sure. People have a little bit of money. You get a lot of people with a little bit of money, and if you multiply that together, you get the power of the crowd. I mean, it's essentially a very, very simple mathematical construct. How big is this industry right now? This actually is old data. This is well over a year old, so these numbers are actually even bigger. 452 crowdfunding platforms around the world. So we all think in terms of Kickstarter and Indiegogo and Rocket Hub and a few others. 452 around the world. Lots of them. 1.5 billion was raised in 2011. Over 1 million campaigns. This is old data. We're funded. It's a lot more now. I'm guessing it was well over 3 billion in 2012. Big. Kickstarter. What are the numbers? Their most recent numbers published for 2012 were about 320 million donated. All said, all in. They've collected about 275 million of that. What works? And we're going to talk more about what works, but just in terms of statistically, we just look at it from 30,000 feet, what's working? Kickstarter's numbers suggest that film and video projects are closing the funding round at about 40%. I've seen other numbers that say that's lower, but let's assume it's true, 40%. Music projects are closing at 55%. Games are closing at 32%. This interesting chart here is telling us, well, who's actually raising the most money in that. What you learn is that while games close at 32%, they actually raise a substantial amount. About 25% of the overall raise in Kickstarter is for games. Music, while they are very successful projects, the total raise is about 10% of the total. And film and video clocks in at less than 20% of the total. So the success rate doesn't necessarily equate with the total raise. What works? Veronica Mars works. Right? Everybody knows that? 100% of you know what happened with Veronica Mars a week ago. Just in case one of you don't, television series ran 3 years, cult following off the air, just ran a Kickstarter campaign asking for, I think, $2 million. Raised $2 million in 24 hours on Kickstarter. I checked today, it was over $4 million a week later. Okay? Lots of articles being written about what does it mean that Veronica Mars went to $4 million and cleared so fast. We'll talk more about that. So, here's what I would do, and here's what I have done when I think about crowdfunding. These are my favorite books on crowdfunding. And you're looking at those books, and you are immediately, because you are smart people, saying, Steve, none of those books are about crowdfunding. Not one of them. You're like, I'm not going to read these books. Isn't there like a book called Crowdfunding for Dummies that tells me exactly what to do? And it's the yellow one, and it's easy to find. And let me tell you why. These are the books. One, William Goldman's Adventures in the Screen Trade. William Goldman, favorite screenwriter ever. This is a book that is dated. It's like in the early 80s or late 70s. At the time, I think Burt Reynolds was the #1 star. I mean, it's an old book. But William Goldman tells stories about Hollywood that resonate and are correct today. And the #1 thing that William Goldman says is nobody knows anything. And he knows that from 30, 40 years experience. And he explains to you why they don't know anything. And I have learned nothing personally since that point in time that suggests that anyone knows anything. And I think it's a great lesson, especially since we know that everything before 2009 we could throw out the window in terms of being relevant to us as independent filmmakers. So I view that as an incredibly important positioning statement, and by the way, it's a great book. Second is Freakonomics. This is the stuff that turns me on. Because Freakonomics is a book that will tell you story after story after story that will prove to you that most of the things that you think are variables that are important for the venture you want to undertake are not the variables that are important. There are other variables, and they are typically variables that people who are telling you anecdotes, I did it this way, this worked for me, my friend did it that way and it worked for them. It will convince you that you need to go deeper than that. Very useful. Next is Moneyball. Fantastic book. The Game of Baseball. If you haven't read the book, read the book. If you've seen the movie, it's also going to explain it. The book is even better. Moneyball takes Freakonomics and it takes an industry and it dissects it statistic by statistic, gets rid of all the emotion, convinces you that all of the scouts that have been watching baseball players for years and years and years and years and years, who are trying to tell you that a player has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 tools. They can field, hit, run, throw, all that stuff. They're trying to convince you that you cannot rely on that kind of anecdotal information because there is better information if you have the statistics. And the better information in Moneyball is simply one thing, on-base percentage. If you're a baseball fan, you haven't read that book or seen that movie, you need to go see it. If you're not a baseball fan, you want to make movies, go see this. It's relevant to you. Finally, Outliers. Malcolm Gladwell, one of my favorite social scientist authors, he will convince you that all of those other things are correct, and he will also teach my favorite lesson, which is if you work your ass off, if you work your ass off for 5 years, 2,000 hours a year, you're going to become an expert, you're going to figure it out. I find that very inspiring. So I'm working on my 5 years to get ready to go into crowdfunding. Okay, so I'm almost there, I'm almost ready. Okay, so why am I taking this so seriously? And if it's a game, why do I want to win so badly when it comes to a crowdfunding campaign? Why don't I just not care? I try it, I think. First of all, everyone that I have talked to in every report I've read, so this is consistency, anecdotal and statistic, an enormous time and money suck. I think you all know that or you've heard that. I can't imagine anyone has ever told you it does not take a lot of time, it does not take a lot of money. So if I'm going to spend that time and money, the opportunity cost for me to do more relevant things is high. If I'm going to spend that time and money, I want to win the game. More importantly for me, personally, having raised a lot of money in the past for various kinds of projects, is I don't like failure and what it means for my project. I'm guessing that if you have a movie project, a music project, a video game project, that you think is important enough to crowdfund, you probably are married to this idea. You love this idea. This is your baby. I'd be a little surprised if you're going down this path if you didn't feel that level of passion. This is your baby. You're going to be married to this when it succeeds for years. You make a successful independent film, you're going to sign a 7-year distribution deal, which is going to get renewed. As a producer, you will be married to your film if it succeeds forever. I hope you love it. Okay? So, but here's the problem. If that baby is something that you're willing to be married to for that long, you roll out on day one, the first thing you decide to do with that project is roll it out on Kickstarter, and you cannot convince the crowd to say yes, what is your plan B? What is your plan B if you fail at Kickstarter?
Move on.
Move on is a great guess. So, let's say the crowd says no, and you go, ha, Steve said there was my money and other people's money. So, I don't have any money. Crowd doesn't have any money. I got to go get other people's money. I'm going to go get investors. I'm going to get investors. I'm going to do it right. I'm going to have operating document. I'm going to have disclosures. And I'm going to tell the truth. I'm going to tell those investors everything about this project. What do I have to tell them? I have to tell them that I wrote this project out to the crowd. And the crowd said no. I have to tell them that. Or I could be violating state and federal securities laws for failing to disclose all of the relevant information about my project. That scares the crap out of me. I don't want to violate state and federal laws, and I don't want to tell investors that the crowd said no. But I will tell them that if I do that first, and I go to investors second. I don't have a choice. And I don't know how you put lipstick on that pig. How do you do that? I don't know. I don't know, because I assume you did everything you could, and people said no. And we'll talk about this in a moment. When you fail on Kickstarter, if you don't know this, you will fail epically. It will be ugly. There will be tracks up your backside, like you got ran over. The statistics are that when you fail at Kickstarter, you get less than 10% of your ask. It's a misery. You don't get close. You don't get close when you fail. So it's a bad message, and that bothers me a lot as someone lurking, thinking about how am I going to do crowdfunding. Now, one other thing to mention, if you actually do succeed, that bothers me about crowdfunding, and that is, in a lot of businesses that I've been involved with, and clients that I've been involved with, having investors can be bothersome sometimes, but it's also great sometimes. Because if an investor has put $100,000 into your project, and it turns out you needed 110, who's going to give you the 10? Your investor is your first choice to give you the 10. They're not going to be happy. They're not going to do the happy dance and buy you drinks and think you're the greatest thing since sliced bread. But are they going to walk away from their $100,000 investment in your project? They're going to throw it all away, everything that they wanted, because they wouldn't give you the last 10? When it turned out you knocked yourself out, you did everything you tried to do, and it turned out it just cost $10,000 more. I'm sorry? Chances are your number one alternative for that 10 is an investor. If I go to Kickstarter and I get my 100 grand and I'm happy, and I'm 10 short, what do? I don't know. It's a wild card. Because it's not like someone's giving you 100 and they're walking away from it. They've given you $15 for a t-shirt. They are not your rescue. Okay? I mean, just think about that. Investors, not a bad thing. I think about that. I lose sleep over that. So, how am I going to rig the game when I join it? Okay? So, there have been in the last just over a year, a few academic studies, pretty deep studies. I'm not going to tell you to go read them. Read the 4 books I put up there. Fun to read, good reads. The studies, not fun to read, very academic, very dry, boring, but they actually have really interesting information. I'm just going to look at my time here. Okay. Ethan Mollick is a professor at Wharton School of Business. He studied 47,000 campaigns on Kickstarter. So your friends who have told you what they did and didn't do, 2, 3 campaigns, he's looked at 47,000. I'm going to give you some of his results. He's saying you have got to understand the power of your social network before you start a Kickstarter campaign. And what he did is he took a variable, very much like a Freakonomics. He just picked a number, a variable to test against. What he did was he said, I'm going to pick one number about how many friends you have on Facebook on the day you start your campaign. And he used 1,000. So he took 47,000 campaigns, and he took 1,000 Facebook friends on the day they started and measured the difference. And that little formula there is this. If you have 1,000 friends or less, you will succeed 9% of the time. If you had 1,001 or more, you jump to 40% success. Now, clearly, there's a linear relationship, but that's huge. You are not ready when you have 100 Facebook friends, according to Professor Mollick. I think he's probably right. Second, you've got to convey the quality of your project, and the way he tested it was, do you have a video to convey the quality of your project? He did not assess, is it good video, is it Scorsese, is it, you know, what? He didn't care. No assessment of the quality of video, but just video exists, video doesn't exist. You don't have a video, you will succeed 15% of the time. You have a video, you will succeed 38% of the time. If you have a video and you can convince Kickstarter to feature you, 90%. Okay? So those are real numbers, 47,000 campaigns. He also will tell you that you have to understand the margins in the hot zone. What are the margins? The margins are most campaigns that succeed barely succeed. So yes, we talked Veronica Mars 2 million over. That's atypical. It was not going to happen to you. You are going to succeed by $1, metaphorically. Okay? And the reason is that someone will come in and save you if you're that close. And they will give you enough to save you and get you over the hump. Okay? You have to understand that. When you fail, you will not be close. You will not be close. Which introduces the concept, he talks about the hot zone. The hot zone is you need to get people involved in your campaign immediately. You have to design a campaign that takes off like a rocket. You need to get to about 50% of your total like in the first week of a month. You want to take off if you can. The statistics will say there is no linear hockey stick. You're too far away, and the people that will come back and save you, you're too far to be saved. You need to get up fast as you can. So if you're designing a campaign, what are you going to do to get friends and family, everybody that you know, on board to get into the hot zone, way ahead of the linear hockey stick? The last thing he'll tell you, if you read the entire study, which you're not going to read, you got to understand where you are. What I mean is, where are you geographically? It matters. You're actually in a good spot in Seattle. You're in a good spot in San Francisco, the Bay Area. You're in a good spot in a number of metropolitan areas because these are communities that have shown they have support of Kickstarter, and you actually get a bump because it's perceived that you know what you're doing because you're in these tech areas. So you want to understand where you are and play to that community. So here's what's interesting. So Mollick is kind of the guy who's come out with some real numbers. So as it turns out, today is what, what's today, 26th? 27th. So 2 days ago, March 25th, Mollick's second study came out. I had no idea, I'm just doing a search today. I found out today, Mollick's second study came out. It's so new that he hasn't even got diagrams and numbers attached. It's a pre-study, so I pulled it down, and there's a couple new pieces of information that he has that you're going to know before anybody else knows. One is that he compared 2,100 Kickstarter campaigns, so not 47,000, he selected 2,100 Kickstarter campaigns. He compared them with the indicia that venture capitalists use. So he drilled down on what do VCs use to select a company. And they're talking about things like the background of the team, your management team. They're talking about things like preparedness. They're talking about things like third-party endorsements. And he compared that with the Kickstarter campaigns, and he found that there was generally the same factors applied. So even though Kickstarter contributors look at it very differently, like they don't look at an endorsement the way a VC would. A VC might say, Warren Buffett likes your idea. I think I like it too. Like, in Kickstarter world, they're going to say, you've got 1,000 Facebook friends. I'll like you too. Okay? But those are viewed as third-party endorsements, so the same indicia apply. You've got to show, according to Mollick, for success, you've got to show that your management team has experience in this project, that they can pull it off, and there's a reason to invest in you, just like a VC. You've got to show that you're prepared. You've got to have the video prototypes. If you're not doing films, you're doing a product, you've got a working prototype, you've got to show it to show that you're ready to go. One interesting thing that I think will become news, Kickstarter, crowdfunding generally, according to the data, much less gender bias. He just found out with the study. So VCs have a great gender bias towards men. We can talk about that another time. Comparatively, crowdfunding, no gender bias whatsoever that we could find, which I thought was compelling, and as the father of daughters, wonderful. Yeah. Couple follow-up studies. I'm going to rip through these. Wash out of Michigan State University. There are 5 motivations that they've discovered for contributing. These should seem self-evident, but there's one comment. The motivations are getting the rewards, the stuff, helping others to achieve goals, supporting like-minded people, being part of a community, and supporting a cause. The last 4 of those 5 are really interesting. Why? Because typical investors don't give a crap about those things. Right? They don't give a crap. They're interested in rewards. Investors want rewards, and rewards means money. They want a return on their investment. Typically. These are very new and interesting, and this would be a reason to go into a crowdfunding campaign if you can meet those needs. I guess that's probably not much of a surprise. This is the greatest phrase I've come across in the last year. Here's the problem with all of you. This is why the hot zone matters. This is why failure is epic and that you barely make it. It's the social science concept that they call social loafing. I just love that. Social loafing. What is social loafing? Social loafing is a systemic problem in crowdfunding. It is, I don't have to jump in because others will. I can lurk in the background waiting to see if a campaign, I'll give you 25 bucks, but I don't have to do anything else and join in because someone else will take care of the problem for me. Social loafing. And this is more than any other problem what is being assigned to why you can't get over the hump right now by the social scientists. You've got to overcome this in some fashion. A couple different things are being suggested. One is you overcome social loafing by going back to the funders who hit you early, repeatedly, figuring out how to reach back them, reach back them, reach back them, and make them into repeaters and hopefully into closers. Closers give on average $74 more per, and of course it's an average, so it's a huge differential. $74 more dollars per contribution than non-closers. You want people who are closers. You're also going to overcome social loafing by addressing the hot zone, figuring out how your campaign's going to take off like a rocket. So, difficult choices in the history of mankind. Star Trek or Star Wars, Ginger, Marianne, Beatles or the Stones, coming in fourth, Kickstarter or Indiegogo, right? You guys all know the difference between those? Believe it or not, surprise, surprise, they've been studied. Now I always use, for Kickstarter, the sort of all or nothing as a phrase. The social science phrase is these models use what's called the return rule, which is if you don't hit the number, the money goes back to the contributors. It's all returned. And the project gets nothing, right? That rule encourages people to donate more to higher risk projects according to the stats. What's higher risk? They're less popular for some reason. They have lower thresholds. They're farther away. We're farther away from completion of the project. The problem with this model is it tends to encourage people to spread their donations. In other words, they're like giving little bits to a lot of these high-risk projects, kind of a portfolio investment model. So that is a detract. So that's Kickstarter. Direct donation model is I donate the money, it sticks with the project. I don't get it back. Indiegogo. It provides donors the incentive for donating, and they tend to coordinate. This is great. If you have a small project, you have a community, and people will coordinate to get over the hump. That's the Indiegogo model. So they've studied this now, and they've come in, what is most effective? That's what you want to know. The winner, statistically, by far, is Kickstarter, in terms of more efficiency and higher total numbers coming into the project. So you may have already known that. Maybe you did not. The statistics from the most recent study are supporting that if you need to raise a lot of money, you're going to go on Kickstarter. So, now, how do I rig the game? Did we learn enough to rig the game? And I take everything we just talked about. These are my bullets. I'm going to preach to a choir. Okay? I am going to join Kickstarter when I already have a choir waiting for my message. Okay? Number one, I'm going to build on some form of existing success that I can demonstrate to the Kickstarter contributors. I'm going to do everything I can to maximize my perceived quality. I'm going to probably employ the return rule and go on Kickstarter versus Indiegogo. I'm going to do everything I can to mitigate social loafing. I'm going to live in the hot zone if I can. I'm going to incent repeaters and closers. Okay? So there's three little screen captures there. One's Veronica Mars. And while we can dismiss it as, oh, Veronica Mars, everything we talked about in space, right? I mean, everything. There was an audience waiting for this project. The perception of quality could not have been higher for this audience. I mean, every indicia that we've looked at, they hit it out of the park. Okay? Locally, Hands of Fate. I can't even read my own screen capture. Hands of Fate. Gamers, of course, yay! Great success story from about a year ago. Fantastic. But again, if you go through everything we've talked about, they knocked it out of the park. Had an audience, they're preaching to a choir, they're ready for the message, they had an existing success, they owned the community that they're in, they did everything. They used the return rule, and they got out of the box fast. So outstanding. That Kid Rules the World. Great. They already filmed. The film was out. It was on the festival circuit. Then they did a Kickstarter campaign. So they had all of these dialed in, right? They had an audience waiting to receive it, and a message that was going to be receptive to that audience. So, I have a project right now that I put up on the screen early on, the Maury Island Incident. It's a 22-minute short film. Someday we want to make a feature out of it. We think it's a really sexy project. It's a piece of local history. It's a UFO story. Very tragic. First 2 deaths in Air Force history. Resulted from the investigations. Very interesting story. So, will I do a Kickstarter campaign for this? I think the answer is yes, but knowing what I know, I'm going to rig the game. And that means I'm going to take a long time before I get to Kickstarter. And I think how we're going to do it is, we're funded, we're going to complete our short film in June. We've been working with all of the cities on the Puget Sound corridor that have some vested interest in this project as a piece of local history, and they're all on board, supporting the project in a variety of capacities. We'll take our short film, hopefully on a successful festival run. We'll hopefully take it on some digital distribution. We'll build an audience for that project. We'll complete our feature script so that we have our indicia of quality. We're ready to go. When we go on Kickstarter, we'll obviously have a video. We have all that footage from the film that we shot ready to go. We will tap the genre audience. We have UFO conspiracy theory audiences that are off the charts. I didn't know that. I've never done a movie in this world before. Greatest audience ever, by the way. Ever. UFO conspiracy theory, science fiction audience is fantastic. They're super supportive and they're huge. Our director is also the founder of South King Media, so he has a news empire with 100,000 daily viewers. And he's totally been tapping that. So we'll build that third-party endorsement. We'll build that social network around it. And then, when we're ready, we'll go on Kickstarter to get some portion of our feature budget, along with our friends at Washington Film Works, where we'll spend the money in Washington and get our 30% back, which becomes exciting. So that's how we'll do it. That's how we'll rig the game. And finally, I'm just going to say one thing about this Jobs Act. I don't know if you've heard about this, but right now we've been talking about reward-based crowdfunding. Somebody gives you some money and they get some stuff, right? And you're probably very familiar with that. In 2012, we passed the Jobs Act. The Jobs Act included film production. So this is a really intriguing thing. We can actually see in the future, we're supposed to have already seen, that crowdfunding could be available to investors. So in theory, you go to a Kickstarter type of site, and instead of getting a t-shirt for your 25 bucks, I love t-shirts, that's why I keep using it. By the way, 47,000 Veronica Mars t-shirts already out the door. 47,000. I counted, I thought it was interesting. Equity can come in, so instead of my t-shirt, I can own whatever percentages of your production as an investor with getting a return for my 25 bucks. It is believed that might increase the size of your projects. This is why it matters to you, by up to 4 or 5. There are a lot of people speculating how will it play in the market. 4 to 5 times what you normally get. So let's say the average is 30,000. Let's just say that for a feature film. I don't know. The idea is that equity will bring enough capital into this market, and they'll be interested in bigger numbers, and that'll be useful to all of us as filmmakers. So that was supposed to be here. SEC chair quit before passing regulations, and it's been delayed and delayed and delayed. Whether it'll happen by the third quarter of this year, nobody knows. But it will come in some fashion. We'll see what it looks like. So that's it. I think I went over. I'm sorry about that. That's the talk.
Amazing information, and probably has had a very long time. But so you know, FMI.com in about 2 weeks. Share it with your friends. Steve, thank you so much for making us bigger and better, and come again next month.